All right, we're live, and my guest is Ashley Hefley today, an organ donation professional and a former evangelical turned mystic, which I'm intrigued by, and a retired Disney princess performer. So you've done a little bit of everything coming into this world that we're in today.
Yes, magic has always kind of been a part of my life, it feels like, but now just in a different way. And yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
It's great to talk to you. I appreciate the time. So what is intriguing to me and this is the Post-Evangelical podcast. We're talking about what spirituality looks like in what I call a post-evangelical world. Even though we still have evangelical churches around, I think we're moving into a season sort of beyond that. And you have a Christian background that now has turned towards some more mystical practices. And you even say Christians can learn from some of these mystical practices from other traditions, faiths, etc. And so how did you come into this mystical space?
I want to say probably, ever since I was maybe in high school, I really enjoyed astrology. And I think that was something that was kind of popular, has been popular for a while, reading your horoscopes and such.
Was that evil in your household though? Were like demons going to jump on you? Like that would have, in my household, it was, if you read the horoscope in the newspaper, when we had newspapers, demons were going to jump on you for doing that.
Yeah, it was definitely very taboo. I didn't really talk about it, but I always enjoyed reading it in like my magazines that I had. But it was kept on the down low. I didn't talk about it. But then, like as time has gone on, it's come into more of the mainstream space, and with social media and stuff, we have a lot more access to information. And TikTok happened, so I was always looking at astrology videos on TikTok and how the algorithm works. It got me down a little bit of a rabbit hole of all sorts of different kinds of practices, and into tarot cards and even onto witch TikTok. And I at first was like, oh my gosh, where am I? How did I get here? But I enjoyed what I was watching, and I was like, started to have those questions like, what about this is bad?
Do you consider yourself to be a witch at this point?
I do. And okay. At this point, I like to have that, because it gives a little bit of a shock factor when I say it sometimes.
Okay.
And then people are always curious. They're like, what does that mean to you? And I think they're always a little bit surprised by the answer of it. It means something different to everybody. And for me, it's connecting with the earth, connecting with the elements, and maybe bringing it back to a space of more ancient indigenous practices, and like really learning about the earth and our planets in the universe in a way that can help aid me as a person. Like what do I need to be working on as a person, and how can these things help me?
Now I'm sure you've seen the Greg Locke video about witches, and I'm going to play it real quick. I hope it's not offensive to you, but
no.
Anybody that hasn't seen this, I shouldn't say crazy video. That's mean to people who are struggling with mental health issues. But this video from this outrageous pastor. This is Greg Locke, an extremist pastor in Tennessee, talking about witches.
We got first and last names of 6 witches that are in our church. And you know what's strange? 3 of you are in this room right now. 3 of you in the room right now. You better look in my eyeballs. We ain't afraid of you, you stinking witch. You devil worshiping Satanist witch. We cast you out in the name of Jesus Christ. We break your spells. We break your curse. We got your first name. We got your last name. We even got an address for one of you. You so much as cough wrong, and I'll expose you in front of everybody in this tent, you stinking witch.
So what do you think about, whoops, let me get you back here. What do you think of when you hear something like that?
Um, m- when my mom saw it, she texted me and was like, "Hey, I like be careful," because she knew that I was putting stuff out on the internet. Um, I would love with people like that, you can obviously tell that there isn't going to be any like conversation. There's not going to be any listening. I can tell you, I could tell him straight to his face, like, I don't believe in Satan. So how could I worship somebody that's not there? Or how I don't believe in the devil. So how can I, worship something that I don't believe in per se? And like starting that conversation. But it is a interesting thought that Christian culture for a long time has equated witchcraft and like Satanist, devil worshiping as like the same, when for most people that's not the case at all, because most or a lot of witches don't even like claim like a belief in Satan or anything like that.
Do you believe that there are witches that can tap into a dark spiritual power?
I think that there are, just with anything, there's like their balance, right? There's the good and the bad, there's the positive and the negative. And yeah, of course. I think there are people that can use energies for harm. However, whenever you
Which is
sit
true of Christianity, by the way, yes.
exactly, like, and that's kind of the point is it depends on your intent. And just like with any belief, you can weaponize any belief or any thought or practice to harm others. So what is your intent behind it? And I think that's the big question.
So as you're interacting, say, with the tarot cards or these practices, what do you think is the spiritual aspect of that? Are you interacting with something spiritual that's outside the temporal world that they see? How do you perceive that?
I see it as my way of connecting with the divine and being able to maybe communicate in a way that some might think that prayer is for them, a way of communicating. Whereas whenever I was in the Christian space and I would pray, I felt like I was just doing a lot of talking, and I didn't quite understand when people say, "Oh, you need to listen." I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I can't hear anything. So that was always really difficult for me. But when I started utilizing things like tarot cards or even just like guided meditations, it was a way for me to receive a message.
Mm.
And by putting out my intent saying, "Hey, the angels that surround me, if you have a message for me," or, sometimes, we talk about within the Christian community, I do feel like it's talked about a lot of the time, like, oh, if somebody has passed away, they're like, "Oh, so and so sent me a sign today to let me know that they're with me." And I feel if we like thought a little bit more into that thought, it's very similar. It's them trying to connect with you from heaven or the afterlife realm. And why don't we open up more channels for them to connect and speak with us, or the universe in general to send us a message of hope or something maybe we need to work on, or where we are having troubles and struggles, what can we do to help overcome those?
It's interesting because I was talking with somebody about this recently, and I was saying I think through meditation and practices like these, I can learn to share love and energy with other people. I think we all have a mystical connection. And my Christian friend was like, "Oh, I don't know if I believe in that." I'm like, well, when somebody asked me to pray for their aunt in New Jersey that has a headache, what do you think is happening? I mean, what is the difference of saying, say a prayer for my dog who's ill, and saying, I'm going to send love and energy to another person? I mean, do you see those as similar types of interaction with the spiritual realm?
Absolutely. I think it's exactly the same. Just, I think for most people, it's just the maybe the theological aspects and the religious aspects of it, that what is within their religious realm is right, but anything outside of that or a little bit different than that can't be. So if we maybe just like opened it up a little bit and think, well, I mean, it's all the same thing, just with maybe a different belief or a different thought process behind it.
So, as somebody who has a religious Christian background, how do you deal with verses in the Bible that talk about divination, witchcraft, don't suffer a witch to live? I don't know. How do you deal with verses like that?
Yeah. So how I look at like the Bible now, I kind of look at it similarly as I would with other religions, and knowing that there is so much good to be learned from it and so many great stories. And like I listened to your episode with Joe Lumen recently, and oh, so many things that just really resonated with my heart, and like the story of Jonah, like you guys were talking about. There are things to be learned and mirrored back and reflected, just like in the Bible with other religions as well. And also having a historical context, and an understanding of the patriarchy and how that has affected women and, people that would claim to be witches, or maybe might just have their inclinations towards herbology and crystals and things like that. And understanding at the time it was more of a context issue.
Yeah.
Just and a lot of the time fear of the unknown and not really accepting anything outside of that. Yeah.
It's always, those things are very interesting to me, and I'm with you. I think we have to look at the Bible and say this was written by an ancient group of Bedouin farmers, and they put God into a context they could understand. But what's
Right.
interesting is the Bible, you know, restricts witchcraft and divination and dealing with the dead, spirits of the dead, and things like that. But then there's this story of where King Saul, calls Samuel up from the dead. Like he gets the witches of Endor to call up, and Samuel literally comes and talks to Saul. So there's still this evidence that they believed. Because I think what happens in the West is we're like, oh, either that stuff is really spooky or just hokum. But the Bible has evidence that it believed it was real. Elijah and Moses spoke to Jesus long after they were dead. And so I think the Bible has evidence that this world and the mystical world, the divine, as you put it, are much more interactive than we give the Bible credit for understanding.
Absolutely. It whenever you can like open up a little bit to it, I feel like God and the universe has shown itself to me in ways that it hasn't in my previous, 24, 25 years, in ways that like really made me feel, okay, I'm part of something just spectacular and I have a part to play in this. Whereas previously I really felt disconnected from it.
Mm. Wow, that's I love how you put that, and I think that's a lot of the journey I'm on too. Is I always felt sort of like a pawn in God's game,
Mhm.
and I needed to ask God to move me in good places rather than bad. And now I'm with you. I feel like it's much more up to you and me to be interactive with the spirit of heaven, if it will, to see good things happen in the world and good things happen to ourselves, and a lot of things like that. And I'm still figuring all of that out,
Same.
and probably
Yes.
will be till I die. Yeah.
That's the fun of it. I think we got to that point. I think I got to the point where I realized that I don't have to have it all figured out. but I can enjoy where I'm at, and I can enjoy the interactions that I am having and I'm putting out. And I think this is like the first time I've actually really felt a genuine joy being able to connect with God.
Wow. So Ashley Hefley is my guest today. Her Instagram, is that kind of all your social media addresses there?
Yes, that's my Insta and TikTok. I'm not really super present on TikTok, but mostly Instagram.
Okay, very good. And you can find her there. And do you also do readings for people and things like that?
I have prior, and I have
Okay.
put that out there, and I do enjoy doing that on like a case by case basis if somebody reaches out to me. I haven't put it out for like public sale per
Okay. All
se,
right.
but
All
I
right.
do enjoy it.
So, and for those who are part of the Pastor Paul community online on my website, pastor-paul.com, we're going to do a bonus podcast in a bit with Ashley, and she'll show us what a tarot card reading looks like, which I'm intrigued at and also worried that demons are going to jump on me. So at least I hope not. I hope not in the middle
I
of
got
it.
my crystals. We're good.
All right. So where does Jesus fit into all of this for you now? And I hope these are okay questions to ask. Like, what does Christianity look like for you in the middle of all of this?
So I will say, like, honestly, about a year ago, I was very angry with it. I had to go through an anger phase. But my husband still actually does claim to be a Christian. He still claims that title. I've distanced myself from the title, but I do, much like Joe on your recent podcast was talking about, looking at Jesus as someone to strive to be, and somebody who I still like hold dear to my heart, as in the historical context, and also the metaphor of like death and rebirth and how that lives within all of us, and how we have a lot of power over that. I find that Jesus was somebody that we can look to right now, who protected women and people that were outliers in communities, and was a champion of the marginalized. And so he is somebody that I still really hold close to my heart.
Yeah, there are times I wish somebody had written down him saying like slavery is bad, or there are a
We
few
had
things.
those specifically written.
Yeah, I would have asked him to say a few more things if I had my choice. But I do believe that for me, Jesus was the demonstration of what interaction between humanity and heaven looks like. I have a very good Buddhist friend that I've grown very close to over the last few years, and he says to me all the time, Jesus was the best Buddhist ever. And that Jesus was out meditating all night long to get himself centered again and know where he was. And I know this is part of your message, right? That even in Christianity, people can reach for some of these other different practices and disciplines to find their way to spirituality, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can see now, like, there's a very significant crossover in the evangelical world with like essential oils and things like that. And I want to be like, that's part of witchcraft. That's part of it. It's herbs, it's the earth, it's connecting with nature. It's
Yoga is starting to become okay too. Yeah.
it's slowly getting there a little bit, but it is taking care of not just your physical body, not just your mental body, but like your soul. It is feeding your soul in the ways that you need to be fed, and the ways that you need to be fed are different from mine, but it's a journey to find that.
Yeah. And the Greek word in the New Testament that we translate saved or salvation is sozo, and that's not a word that means say a magic prayer and go to heaven one day. It's a word that means to be restored, body, mind, and soul, to be wholly restored to what I think is sort of the Jewish concept of shalom. What shalom? Shalom doesn't mean the lack of conflict or the lack of war. It means being able to have peace in the middle of all circumstances, to be okay in the middle of whatever comes down. And so I do see a lot of these practices that help us get there. And mindfulness, in fact, I have some of my incense going right now, because
Yes.
I found that using these sensory opportunities really does connect me more to the mystical and divine world. And so why wouldn't we try these things? And I guess, and the Bible says, if you ask God for breakfast, he's not going to give you a snake. And if we say, I want to find a way to connect more deeply with you, God, with heaven, with whatever that looks like, and if it's something bad, we'll know it. We'll push
Right.
away from it, right? I don't know. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Right. I feel that if it were bad, I wouldn't feel so whole. There would be a very distinct feeling, and I find myself really connected to my intuition, that I know that this is right for me.
What was, and you say you were kind of following astrology as a young kid. Do you remember sort of when you said, okay, I'm going to try this mystical stuff and see what happened? What was that? Was there like a moment, and what was that like?
So that was actually fairly recent. So about a year ago, I connected with a community of people that they called themselves witches. And I was like, I kind of like agree with all of your stuff, but I don't want to call myself that. And we did we had a community, like Zoom, like we are doing now. And we all just got together and did like a meditation together. And we were focused on maybe like meeting any like angels or spirit guides and things. And it was like really beautiful and felt really transformative for me. Like a moment where I was like, okay, this feels real. And even if it is in my head, the things that are coming to my head are speaking to me in ways that are moving me. And so I'm like, even if my psyche is making this all up, I'm still getting a lot of great messages from it. And I am finding myself like reignited as a woman, as a human being, and like filled with love, that this feels like the right path. And so I started tinkering down that path and really connecting with the other people that were part of the community. And I had already started like a whole bunch of crystal collections, and I had, dabbling in the tarot cards and my astrology. And then it kind of just continued from there.
It's beautiful. So what do you see? What do crystals do? How do crystals work?
Yeah. So crystals, everything from the earth has energy, much like herbs. Everything is made of atoms and has different energetic elements that are part of them. And so they each are known to have some kind of like metaphysical properties attached to them. So I have like my black stones. This one's a black tourmaline and a black obsidian. And like most black stones are just like very grounding and cleansing of negative energies, and protective being like the main one for all of the black stones. So I like to have those near me with computer stuff to help aid no like computer techie issues.
So they have specific tasks they handle in your house.
Yes, they do. I have like my selenite is this little like clear one. That one is a cleansing property stone, very cleansing, and it can also charge other stones. There's a lot of mainstream on social media about like charging your crystals under the moon and all that fun stuff, which is very witchy. But I like how they look. And for me, it's like a physical representation of the energy that I want to embody. So if it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo, that's what it is. That's fine. But it might work as a placebo,
Yeah. I mean, what you said about it could all be inside. I was on a podcast with an atheist friend of mine recently, and he's like, why do you believe in something mystical and supernatural? And I said, because I've just had too many supernatural experiences in my life to be able to just brush it away and say it doesn't exist.
Right.
But I am willing to stipulate that could all be inside here. But if I can tap into that and feel like it's something that brings me to my better self, then what's the harm? I mean, I get the
Exactly.
harm of Christianity
Yeah.
if I'm trying to oppress somebody or force them into my religion and all of those things. But if I'm thinking it's something coming externally from outside the universe and it's actually in here, I don't know. Have I lost anything in that? I'm still
Exactly.
inspired. And the funny thing is, I'm
Inspired,
sorry
yes.
to keep going on, but this is what I was taught in hearing God practice, in hearing from the Bible. Sometimes they would say, well, if you don't hear anything when you're trying to give a prophetic word to somebody, just give an inspiring verse and then see if it doesn't flow into something. So I don't see this as antithetical to most religious practice in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah. If it's giving you a message and you feel it really resonates, what is the harm? It's not.
And you are you sharing this with your kids? Are they growing up with an understanding of this, and do they understand their mom as a witch, if you will?
So, um, being the mom of a blended family, my oldest daughter is 9 and she lives with her mom most of the time. But
Okay.
we have her for visitations, and she actually was bringing up some questions about crystals prior to me even really sharing with her. And she kind of had some questions about ghosts and things and connecting with spirits and stuff before I even got to talking with her. So yeah, it's something that I do. My husband and I have decided our kids will know what I believe and they'll know what he believes, and they'll know that we support them in their journey to figure out what they believe as well. And while I might be doing this weird thing over here with my incense and my crystals, and I might be meditating or whatever, if that doesn't suit you, that's fine. But both of my girls really enjoy holding on to crystals and collecting those, and they really enjoy learning about my beliefs.
Well, again, this is all a world opening up to me. I had a friend who is an entrepreneur, and he started selling these water bottles with crystals in the bottom of the bottle. And I was asking him about it, and he's like, I don't know what to tell you. I've seen the evidence. It's pretty stark on the difference of drinking water out of this bottle versus just a regular bottle. And so I don't know. There's something to all of this that I think is worth looking into.
Yes, I agree.
All right. So what I want you to kind of demonstrate a tarot card reading, and you can sort of guide us in how we do that. And there's some folks even that have some questions or something. And so we can do that in the bonus podcast. And so we do that for the people in the Pastor Paul community, online community at pastor-paul.com. So you can join us over there and get a link to the bonus podcast. But it's been a wonderfully interesting conversation, and I appreciate you bringing to us.
Oh, I've loved every minute of it.
All right. So join us in the bonus podcast. We'll get a tarot card reading with Ashley. And in the meantime, appreciate everybody joining us here on the Post-Evangelical podcast with Pastor Paul and our website, pastor-paul.com. Okay. Hey, do you have, is your name spelled right? Is your Instagram name spelled right on your screen, or?
Yes, it's
Okay.
Ash Hefley. Yep.
Ash Hefley. Okay.
Yes.
For a second, I was like, my mind transposed it.
Yeah.
All right.
Nope, you're good.
All right. So before we jump into this, is there any way I need to set this up? Do you want me to ask questions? There's a couple of people asking questions in the comments. How do you want to do this?
Oh yeah, I'm game for however. I can just basically, like with this, I'll just do like a general message for whoever's listening that they might need to hear. And kind of tell them like how I get in the right headspace to really like look at the cards and stuff.
Okay. Very cool. Well, we'll do it then. All right. Welcome to our bonus podcast. We've been having a wonderful conversation with Ashley Hefley, who is a former evangelical turned mystic, who works as an organ donation professional. Her family is involved in business and youth sports. But we're here talking about this mysticism of somebody who grew up with a Christian background and now is incorporating in her spiritual life more of these other practices, and of disclosure from me, yoga, meditation, a little bit of Buddhist practice, some other things I've started incorporating into my life. And interesting, and I guess we can reiterate a little bit, you have felt this has given you a little more interactive space with the spiritual world and heaven and the divine, if you will, than you were able to have through Christianity. Is that right?
Yeah, I did feel that there was a sense of like growing up in the Christian space. I never truly felt connected in a way that I do now. But there was also this weird like superiority complex I had for a long time, that now I feel it's gotten me to a point where we can all believe whatever we want to believe. And as long as we're not harming others, we can come together and learn from each other and have great conversations and really connect to our humanity, and also connect to maybe something even more than that.
So we're going to have you do a tarot card reading, and I'm not going to go to hell for asking you to do that.
No, I don't think so.
And I ask that somewhat jokingly.
I know.
I know for some people that's a very significant and serious issue. And so
Yeah.
I don't know, did you have to work through that at all? Am I doing something that makes God unhappy?
Yeah, for sure. I was still like really in the peak of like deconstructing whenever I first started with tarot. I wasn't quite sure how it lined up. And unfortunately, like, to be honest, me and my husband actually lost some friends over it. And we're still kind of trying to work through that. But, luckily we have each other. And from the amount of help and healing that it has brought me, I have grown in ways that I can't even explain in the past couple of years. So from that alone, I feel happy and safe. I feel safe in it. I think that's the word I was looking for.
And by the way, before we got on the air together, we found out that you live in this little space in Southeast Kansas that I actually lived in when I was much younger, and we know this weird space together. But I know that is a very, very conservative area. How are people looking at you in what I know is a little community that you live in there?
So it's hard because I grew up in church down here, and people know me. It is such a small town. Everybody knows everybody. I was really like well liked and well rounded in high school, and so was my husband, and people know us very well, to where it was kind of hard seeing all of a sudden a lot of people not reaching out. But that's honestly more for the older crowd, to be honest, which that's okay. I get it. But I think most people would be surprised at the younger generations around here, even in these conservative areas. I've had so many people that I grew up around reaching out and being like, hey, this is helping me so much. It's so nice to see like that kind of representation, or it's helpful to know that there are other ways to think. And that, I think, alone brings me, it makes me feel a lot better, because you can dwell, you can get a little uncomfortable whenever you see certain people.
Yeah. I live in a conservative area in California, but it's a big city, and so we can find people from a whole lot of different ranges, and you may not have quite that same amount of comfort.
No, just the cows right across the road.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's great. So tell us about tarot cards. How does it work?
Yeah.
What is the point of all this? Tell us about it.
So I tend to just use the Rider Waite Smith deck, which the symbolism is kind of similar to like a regular deck of cards where there's like 4 suits. So we have the pentacles, we have the swords, we have the wands, and we have the cups. And each of those represent like an area of, let's say, the swords represent intellect and mind and anything going on in like your mind, or needing of some sort of making decisions. Whereas wands might be more creativity and creative energy. And so whenever you get a card that's in whatever number of wands, it's hinting at something in the creative realm. And each of the numbers are part of the symbology as well. The color of the cards, like if your card is mostly blue is significant in like emotional, something in regard to your emotions. And then you have the kings and the queens and the, things like that, and a whole major arcana, which have also like a story. Basically, it starts with the Fool, who is beginning on a journey. It's like when you get the Fool in a deck, it's significant of you might be beginning a brand new journey here soon, or something is starting. And then, I think for people, there's like the Death card or the Devil card that people are like, oh my gosh, demons. But in reality, like the Death card is very symbolizes something in your life is ending.
Transition, yeah.
Some sort of transition. The Tower is like, the card is the tower falling, and it's like fire, and it looks scary, but it is like you're in a process of maybe some chaos going on at the moment, maybe some upheaval. There's a lot going on, and you're looking at the cards, and it's bringing up messages and things that maybe you just need to hear. You can always look at them, like do one card pull a day and just get your card for the day. Like, oh, okay, I'm getting a lot of swords today. Maybe I need to be on my mental game. Maybe I'm going to have to make some decisions today. Things like that.
Okay.
But I have my deck here, and I kind of just, I'm not a very good shuffler, so I just kind of go with it. But
Can that mess up your message if you're not a good shuffler, though?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Right.
Because it's one of those things, like we give it to God, we give it to the universe, because whatever card is going to come out is going to be the card that you just need to hear that day.
All right.
Whenever I'm shuffling, okay. Well, one came out. So, okay, we have some swords. Some swords. So we're looking at the 8 of Swords.
Okay.
And you can see from the picture, she's tied up. It's a sense of like constraint, of feeling restricted, feeling maybe having a hard time making a decision because you feel like you have to make a certain decision, but you don't want to make that decision.
So do you think that card is for you? Is it for me? Is it for somebody in the commenters here?
It is for whoever resonates with this, because this came out of me shuffling. Whenever they flip out like that, I'm like, okay, well, I got to say it. But yeah, if this resonates with somebody, like you're feeling restricted right now, I like to bring up, I have an app if anybody is wanting to learn tarot, the Labyrinthos app. It's really great to have whenever you're wanting just like some maybe keywords for a specific card, not wanting to go super in depth. But the 3 key words for this card are imprisonment, powerlessness, and self-victimization. Yeah, feelings of helplessness.
Mm. So those happen to be words that are pretty significant for me, right, in this particular day. Of course, my atheist friends would say, "Wow, those are anybody could take those and
Right.
make them." So it probably does take some belief in walking with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what my husband told me as well. He was like, "Oh, any of these cards could be, what I needed to hear or whatever." I'm like, "Maybe, but maybe you didn't need to hear those others at this specific time."
Yeah, and so and I'm trying to make some decisions about some, just be honest with everybody, some of my mental health and emotional well-being work that I'm doing, and so those words happen to be words that I've been speaking quite a bit, and like trying to think of how I get unstuck and sort of untied in where I am, and so anyway, speaks to me today for sure.
Whoa. Well, then let's do another one. Let's see if we can get something else and see if there's anything specific in regard to that feeling.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a place. This one for a while last year was coming up for me a lot too. Sometimes cards can like be like a stalker card is what they call it. And it's a card where like, if that's a theme that's just like reoccurring, it's like, hey, I need you to take a look at this. This is something I need you to focus on.
Yeah. And we have Jamie, and I think that may be Joa. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. But yeah, let us know if these cards are speaking to you guys as you're following along.
All right. So then sometimes I'll just split the card deck into like 3s and then bring it all up. Okay. Moving on. We have another swords here. We have this 6 of swords, leaving a bad situation and moving forward. Something maybe that was painful and difficult. And it was a hard decision to make, but you're moving on at the moment. You have taken the first step to leaving that situation, and that's what you're supposed to be doing. It might not feel good, but it is what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's spot on for me right at the moment. In fact, like uncomfortably so, I think, to be honest.
And there are times I do want to say, like, there are times where I'll do a reading for myself and I'll be like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
I don't like the cards that came out for me on these questions or how I'm feeling right now. And those are the ones that I'm like, I need to write this down. I need to take this and journal it, because that's where I find like the most breakthroughs come from. And it really gets it out onto paper what you're really feeling about it. And that, I think that's why these have been so healing for me, is because, I mean, they're cards. They don't care about your feelings. They're going to point out something if you need to see it, or if the universe feels like it's something that you need to know. It'll point it out whether or not you want to know it or not.
Interesting. And again, the funny thing to me is we sort of denigrate this stuff in the Christian space. And there was a time when in my life when no matter where I went, I was getting like the best parking spot in the parking lot. And I just felt like it was a season of, that was an indicator of like open doors and profitability and prosperity. And so we can see that. And I would share that as a pastor of a church, and people are like, oh, this is great that God's giving you this favor. So we'll take that all day long. But these cards, we would say, no, that can't be true, or that has to be evil or something. But no, right. those are 2 definitely spot on cards for me.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. I'm sorry if it did make you uncomfortable, but maybe it was helping for somebody else too. Maybe there's a group of people that are in that season, and definitely journal about it for anybody that feels that, because those are hard cards to see.
Well, and I'm in a space of life where I don't think we're supposed to be comfortable. Comfortable is not necessarily good. And I again, it's part of, I think the problem of my religious upbringing was like, oh, we just forgive and forget and move on, or we'll just let Jesus handle it, or we'll take it to the cross. And comfort becomes this really valued thing, when sometimes I think we need to be really uncomfortable and walk through the shit of life
Yes,
to really get down and get honest to what we're doing. So even though those cards are a little bit uncomfortable, I think it's good for us to be uncomfortable and
I
think about
agree.
those things. So wow, that's very
Absolutely.
cool.
Oh, I'm
And
so glad.
you've been dealing and kind of letting tarot cards be important in your life for how long now? You said about a year?
Yeah, a year now. And there's this term in the like witchy community called shadow work, which really is just like therapy in a way, or like really just getting into like the yucky stuff and uprooting it. And I will say this, that tarot cards play a really big role in my shadow work of figuring out maybe some parts in like even like my childhood that maybe I need to look at and revisit, and work through those things. And with the tarot cards, it feels like I'm looking at all these things, but I have like a nice cozy blanket on, and I have I have some pillows. It feels like I have the universe on my side, because it's like, we're here with you, or my angels, or, or God. And it feels like we're here with you. It's okay to look at this yucky stuff, because it might be hard, but we're doing this together. It feels like I'm one with the universe and healing. And we're doing this healing work because this healing work is so important for us individually, so we can heal the collective.
So if somebody else heard what you're saying, maybe they come from an evangelical Christian background, they've been hesitant, what would your recommendation be for them to sort of search this out further?
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about social media is that it's like not permanent. You're not having to buy any books or anything like that. I would look through and maybe search on TikTok or Instagram some tarot readers and just watch one of their lives. So many of them go live and they will do readings for people, and chat with people, just to kind of see like what it is, what it's like. And you can kind of just do that until maybe you're a little bit more comfortable, and maybe you want to book a reading with somebody. You want to see like how it maybe influences you, if it really resonates with you. It's okay if that modality, that path isn't for you, but it is so important to me that I really like to encourage people to at least try it.
And I think my encouragement to people would be, I believe a lot of what we read in the Bible at times, like in the writings of Paul, it will say, this is an imperative to those who believe. Like, I think a lot of times Paul was talking to people in a particular community of people, and he was saying, to be in agreement as a people, we're not going to do X, Y, or Z together. I don't think those are imperatives to everybody through all of history. In fact, I think in some ways, Paul, if he knew how he handled the books we attribute to him in the Bible, he would be like, what? That was never the intention of that. And I say that because I think there is a space to give permission to seek this out, to try things out, not be afraid. And some may work for you and some may not. And if it does, you had a saying in here, right, about this? Take what resonates. Is that right?
Take what resonates and leave the rest. If it doesn't resonate with you, and if you don't find that it feeds your soul, or feeds you any messages that you find resonate, then it might not be for you. But there is something to be said about some of these like grounding techniques, about yoga, about getting an herbal tea and, mixing up a bunch of herbs that are meant for relaxation and drinking it and just nurturing your body. There's something to be said for all of these things. And I think that somebody can find something that suits them.
That's good. Because I think I want to give people permission. Let's remove some of the fear from this.
Yeah.
And you find what works for you in connecting with the divine that draws you to your better self. I think that's the purpose of all of this. I see Christianity, particularly sort of that American evangelicalism, drawing people to their worst self, drawing them to a more exclusive, more divisive self. And so seek out a spirituality that draws you to your better self. And what I love, I'm assuming you're millennial, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't mean to assume, but
No, you're fine.
I have, people lamenting, oh, millennials and particularly Zers are not going to church and it's terrible. And I tell them, I'm getting to hang out with a lot of people from these generations. And yes, they are less Christian than the previous generations, but more spiritual. And that always gives me a lot of hope. So I just want to give people permission to check it out. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, great. Just find what works for you. And I think that's a great message that you bring.
Thank you.
Very cool. So how can people find you online or anywhere else?
Yeah, you can find me at Ash Hefley XO on Instagram and TikTok. I'm mostly on Instagram. I'm on TikTok every now and then, but TikTok's kind of my unfiltered thoughts.
Very good. And just before I let you go, I got to ask, so you were a Disney princess performer. Tell us about working for Disney.
Oh, honestly, some of the best years of my life. Got to work in Florida and Orlando, Walt Disney World for a short little while, and then was able to go work abroad in Hong Kong Disney, and then opened up Shanghai Disneyland in 2016. Wow. And I will always have a special place in my heart for all things Disney. But Cinderella in particular is my girl.
And when you're Cinderella in Shanghai, is she different decidedly from in Orlando?
No, actually, she's not. Unfortunately, there's a language barrier most of the time, but everybody's still so excited to see her. And Cinderella is, one of the more classic, the older princesses. And so she connects with anybody from 2 years old to 100. And so there's nothing better than that.
Oh, very cool. Years ago, when I was working as a sportscaster, before I was doing pastoring and all that stuff, there was Disney hosted a bowl game called I guess it was called the Disneyland Bowl or Disneyland Classic. That's what it was. And so they set us up in the Disneyland Hotel to cover the game and gave us, let us use their editing facilities and their live broadcasting facilities. And it was wonderful. But the one thing they told us is, like, you're going to get to go behind the scenes. And if you tell anything you see behind the scenes, you're out. And we will pull your pass and you're out. And, and so we did get to go behind the scenes and see a lot of stuff. And I was waiting to do my live, and there was somebody broadcasting from another station. And he said, I need your crystal to fix my microphone for me. He said, I saw Goofy with his head off, and it was a female playing Goofy. And man, they were out. They cut that live off. They said, you're gone. So don't ever say if you see Goofy with his head off or anything.
No, especially not whenever you're live on their property.
And tell me if this is true. Like, they told us that you can see there will be several of the characters throughout the park, but there's never more than one Mickey in the park. Is that true? That's not true. Okay. Well, all right.
They are stinkers. They really love to keep Mickey's magic alive, which I understand. He's special.
Beautiful stuff. Well, my son is graduating from high school, and we asked what he wanted to do for a graduation trip, and it was Disneyland. That's where he wanted to go. So
Absolutely.
It is the greatest place on earth or whatever.
So much magic.
Yes. Well, Ashley, it's been great to meet you and get to talk to you. And I appreciate you bringing this message and providing, as somebody was saying in the comments here, validation to try some of these things out. And so very cool for you to share.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate everything that you're doing.
Awesome. All right. And we'll end the broadcast there. Thanks to all you guys who commented. And this will be up on my YouTube channel, guys. And then we'll release the podcast probably I think it's maybe in about 4 weeks from now. We have one more coming on. But thanks, everybody. And if you haven't seen the Joe Lumen podcast that Ashley was referring to earlier, it's one of the best ever. She's amazing, and you got to go listen to that podcast. So it's very, very good. All right, let me end the broadcast here, Ashley, and then I'll say goodbye to you.